My name is Zephyr Collins, and I've always loved the way Denver wakes up. The sun slides down the front range like warm honey, turning brick into gold. Bikes whisper by. Coffee shops steam up their windows like they're keeping secrets. I used to think our housing co-op, the Marigold, held the city's best secret. An oasis where baristas and teachers and grandmas and grant writers could afford to breathe. We weren't fancy. We were a patchwork of thrifted furniture, hand-painted hallway murals, and a shared compost bin that always smelled like coffee grounds. But we were stable. We were safe. I was 29, a social entrepreneur on paper, a professional worrier in practice. I ran the co-op like a conductor with a to-do list: maintenance calendars, food pantry donations, conflict resolution circles, and quarterly board meetings with a potluck rule. We had 5 board members. 4 of us were tenants. The 5th was our community expert, a guy named Davis Merritt. All perfect hair and Patagonia vest, a donor favorite with a LinkedIn page that read like a political campaign. "Zeph, we're gonna take Marigold to the next level," he'd tell me, clapping my shoulder like he owned it. Leverage, scale, strategic partnerships. I smiled because that's what you do when you need someone's vote. But something about Davis always made me check my pockets. The day everything cracked, Denver was in a mood. Storm brewing, sky dark on one side, bright on the other. I could feel it in my throat, like I was swallowing a coin. I was in the community room, lining up donated backpacks for the back-to-school drive, when Marisol burst in with panic like a siren. "Zephyr! My key doesn't work," she gasped. "Someone changed my lock." I blinked, dumb. Who would... That has to be a mistake. She shook her head so hard her curls went wild. "There's a notice on my door. It says I'm trespassing. Trespassing. In my own home." I ran. Second floor. Hall smells like tacos from last night's community dinner. Marisol's door. New brass. Still shiny, with a white paper taped crookedly at eye level. Notice of termination. Vacate immediately. Owner: Marigold Capital Holdings, LLC. My vision tunneled. Capital Holdings? We were a cooperative. Our owner was, well, all of us. We were the holding. I ripped the tape off and read the tiny type until the words started to float. There was a signature at the bottom in a slanted, confident hand. D. Merritt. Managing partner. I felt the coin in my throat drop through me and hit the floor. Number. Marisol touched my arm. "What does it mean?" "It means," I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking, "someone thinks they can take our home." By the time I reached the office, my hands were shaking so hard I mistyped my own password twice. Emails, bank statements, minutes from last month's board meeting. There it was, hiding in plain sight like a snake in the laundry basket. A resolution marked administrative correction, pushed through in the final 2 minutes after half the board left to pick up their kids. Language so sterile it might as well have been disinfectant. Authorize the formation of a wholly owned subsidiary to manage lease operations. Delegate signatory authority to the treasurer for efficiency. I remembered that night. Marisol sang happy birthday to our neighbor's dachshund. Davis poured me a scotch and complimented my leadership cadence. I was tired. I was proud. I didn't see the blade. The treasurer on paper? Davis, appointed when ours moved to care for his mom. The subsidiary? Marigold Capital Holdings, LLC. I found the wire transfers next. Chunks of money shaved off our reserves under the label vendor consolidation. $28,000 to Blue Spruce Consulting, $42,000 to Daybreak Urban Partners, both registered to a virtual office suite downtown. I clicked through filings until the room swam. The addresses were alive with ghosts of Davis's other ventures. A knock on the door. 2 men in polos and cargo shorts, the kind of clean cut that looks purchased. "Afternoon," one said. New management. We're here to rekey remaining units. No, you're not, I said, voice thin. This is a co-op. You can't just... He handed me a stack of papers. Eviction notices, ma'am. Immediate. You can call the number. Immediate isn't legal, I snapped, fingers digging crescents into my palms. 7 days. 14 in some cases. You can't... He shrugged like I was weather. Take it up with the owner. I wanted to scream. Instead, I reached for my phone. Davis? I said when he answered, glossy as a podcast host. What did you do? A pause. The smile in his voice cooled. Zephyr. I was wondering when you'd call. You didn't have authority, I said, feeling heat crawl up my neck. You didn't have consent. You didn't have a soul. Relax, he said. Everything is above board. We're repositioning the property to unlock equity, then we'll restructure. The market's hot. The tenants will land on their feet. Marisol is a nurse with 2 kids, I said. She just pulled a double. Mr. Reeves is 83. He uses a walker. They don't land on their feet. They fall. He exhaled, annoyed. You're emotional. This is what stagnates community projects. Sentiment over sustainability. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. Return the money, I said. Rescind the notices. I will call a special meeting and... You'll do what? He asked, amused. Zephyr, you think a crowdfund and a hashtag can outbid institutional capital? I gave you an out. Come on board. We'll put your name on the press release. Token CEO. The news loves a redemption arc. I looked out the window at the mural we painted last summer, hands of all shades passing a house like a loaf of bread. My throat burned. I'm not your token, I said. And the marigold is not your flip. He clicked his tongue like I'd disappointed him at golf. Then prepare for consequences. He hung up. I stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen. I looked smaller than I felt. In the hallway, someone was crying. In the courtyard, someone was arguing in Spanish over the price of moving boxes. I put on my sneakers. Community room in 10 minutes. I texted the tenant list. Emergency meeting. Bring your lease. Bring your neighbor. People poured in with a current of fear and anger and caffeine. Marisol sat in the front row, hands gripping her knee. Mr. Reeves arrived with his walker and a stubborn jaw. Alejandra from 3B translated for her grandma. The Diaz twins filmed everything for TikTok because that's how they understood the world. I stood in front of them and told the truth. The transfers, the shell company, the paper trick that turned us into trespassers in our own bedrooms. You fought hard for this place, I said, voice steady because it had to be. You cleaned up needles from the alley. You watched each other's kids. You brought soup when I had the flu and left it at my door so you wouldn't wake me. We are a community, not a line item. What do we do? Mr. Reeves asked, eyes fierce behind thick glasses. You tell us where to stand. For a second, the pressure lifted. Then it landed somewhere new. Responsibility. I pulled the whiteboard closer. Here's the plan, I said. We get a lawyer to file a temporary restraining order to stop the illegal evictions. We gather every lease, every receipt, every text thread with management. We make a timeline. We document everything. I wrote in big block letters, transparency. Our weapon is daylight, I said. We show the money trail. We show the human cost. We show Denver exactly who Davis is and what he's done. Alejandra raised her hand. My cousin works at Channel 7, she said. She can get a camera here. My heart pinged. Yes. Marisol lifted her chin. I can get the nurses' union to put out a statement, she said. They don't like predatory landlords. Perfect, I said. And I'm calling the Community Justice Center for pro bono help. We might not win today, but we will slow this down. We will make it expensive. We will make it visible. We broke into teams. The room became a hive. photocopying, translating, calling, crying, grabbing granola bars for kids who didn't understand why adults were speaking in urgent whispers. Between tasks, I caught my reflection again in the window. My face looked different. Not smaller. Sharpened. I felt something click inside me, like a seatbelt. The fear didn't vanish. It aligned. But Davis wasn't done. At 6:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, Notice of Board Action. I opened it. Effective immediately, it read, Zephyr Collins is suspended as executive director of the Marigold Cooperative pending investigation into fiduciary negligence. My hands went cold. Attached. A fabricated performance review. Cherry-picked emails. A spreadsheet where my grant disbursements were relabeled as personal disbursement. A letterhead stamped with our logo. A text followed from an unknown number. A screenshot of a scheduled press release with my name and the word scandal in the preview. Then, take the deal. Or, watch your co-op burn. A sound left my throat I didn't recognize. Around me, the community room hummed on, kids trading markers. Mr. Reeves explaining to a volunteer how to scan his lease with the Notes app. I could tell them. I could show them this new fire. Or I could decide, right now, what kind of story this would be. The door to the community room swung open before I chose. A woman in a navy suit strode in, hair in a tight bun, a messenger bag worn to the threads. "Who's Zephyr?" she asked, scanning the room. "I am," I said, stepping forward. She smiled without warmth, the way doctors do when they have bad news and a plan. "I'm Priya Patel," she said. "Community Justice Center. I saw your messages blowing up Twitter and 3 group chats. I've filed for an emergency injunction. We have a judge in the morning, but..." She dropped her bag on the table and pulled out a manila folder so thick it looked like a brick. "We have a bigger problem." I felt the room tilt. "What problem?" I asked. She opened the folder to a glossy flyer with a rendering of a sleek condo tower where our mural should be. "The Marigold at Sloan's Lake pre-sales begin Friday." My stomach pitched. Priya's jaw tightened. "Davis already lined up a buyer's group," she said. "And if we don't move fast, the contract signs in 48 hours. 48 hours to stop our home from becoming someone else's investment. 48 hours to save hundreds of lives from splintering." I looked at my people, at the backpacks and the whiteboard and the word transparency like a promise. Inside me, outrage flared into something surgical. All right, I thought. Let's make the city watch. Let's make them listen. "Here's what we're going to do," I told Priya, the room, myself, and the future. And then the lights flickered. They cut out. The building went dark. From the courtyard, a shout. "The power!" Silence, then footsteps in the hall. Heavy, purposeful. Priya reached into her bag. "Stay calm," she said. I took a breath in the dark and heard my own voice, steady and low. "Everyone, phones out, flashlights on, doors locked, no one leaves." Because someone wasn't just flipping a switch. Someone was trying to flip our future, and I wasn't going to let them. For 5 seconds after the power dropped, the marigold held its breath. Then the room bloomed with little constellations, phone flashlights, a galaxy of trembling hands. "Stay with me," I said, even though my voice was trying to leave my throat. "Lock the doors. Pair up. Nobody in the hall alone." Priya's beam found my face. "Electrical room?" "Basement," I said. "Follow me." Tay popped up by the door like a human exclamation point. He lived in 1A, an electrician who could coax light out of a dead outlet with a butter knife and a prayer. "I'm coming," he said, tugging on a hoodie. "If they trip the main, we can reset." "If they cut?" He didn't finish. In the stairwell, our light cones sliced dust. Footsteps echoed above us. Heavy boots, not tenants. Contractors? Priya whispered. Or wolves in polos, I said. At the basement door, Tay knelt to feel the hinges like he was reading Braille. Jimmied, he said. Cheap job. He swung it open. The electrical room smelled like metal and rain. Panels hummed, silent now, like a choir holding its breath between notes. Tay flicked his light across the breakers and sucked his teeth. They used a lockout tag. Industrial. And this, he aimed at a fresh padlock on the main, is not ours. He traced a cable to a small black device wedged in the corner, blinking faintly. Priya crouched. That a camera? Tay nodded. Battery-powered nanny cam. Someone wants eyes in our guts. Anger landed in my chest like a weight I knew how to lift. Document, I said. Priya's phone clicked like a metronome. Angles, serials, the stupid smug padlock. Tay stood. I can pop the lock. But if they're waiting to accuse us of tampering, they want a pretext, Priya said. A safety violation is the fastest way to get a building vacated. If they push a red tag with the city, you're out by morning. Boots above. Laughter that didn't belong here. I swallowed the taste of metal. Okay. We don't touch it. Not yet. Back upstairs, the community room glowed. Kids had turned the flashlight cones into planets on the wall. Mr. Reeves sat like a captain at the prow of a ship other people forgot used to sail. Update? He asked. Sabotage, I said. Documented. This is outrageous, Alejandra's grandmother muttered in Spanish. Los ricos sin vergüenza. No shame. Right. I stepped up onto a chair and the room stilled. This is not an accident, I said. Someone wants us out before we can get to a judge. So we're going to do 3 things at once. I held up a finger. 1. Testify. Priya's prepping affidavits. If you saw the locks change or received a notice, she needs your story. Names, dates, details. No embellishments. Truth is potent enough. Second finger. 2. Tell it loud. We're going live. The Diaz twins will stream. Tag local media, council members, anyone with a platform. Hashtag Marigold in the dark. We want a record of what happens tonight. Third. 3. Track the money. We build the ledger. Every transfer, every contract, every consulting fee. We publish it for the city to see. Where? Marisol asked, voice steadier now. Everywhere, I said. But first on a site. Simple, fast, undeniable. We'll call it the Marigold Ledger. Jonah raised a hand from the back, a beanie shadow with a voice you recognize before a face. Zeph, he said. It's Jonah Reyes. I run that local pod, Mile High Mythbreakers. I've got gear in my car. Battery-powered. Interviews, clean audio. I can turn a mini episode by dawn. I didn't know whether to hug him or hand him a mic. Do both later, Priya muttered, already thumbing through statutes. Right now, I need witnesses. We formed stations like a disaster drill. Affidavits at the coffee table with Priya, scanning leases at the printer humming on a backup battery, live stream at the corner by the mural, snacks at the counter, because revolution runs on peanut butter and anxiety. Tay taped bright orange X's on tripping hazards. Phones charging? He called. Conserve. Dim your screens. Unplug anything not vital. I sat with Marisol first. Her affidavit poured out in stops and starts, a story measured in machetes and scotch tape. As she signed, my phone buzzed with a notification. Breaking. Executive Director of Marigold accused of misusing funds. My stomach lurched. The article was a paste job. Blurred screenshots, anonymous sources, the word allegedly doing Olympic-level labor. A Venmo screen grab with my name and a caption brunch next to a $17,000 transfer they'd labeled personal. My fingers went cold. I felt the room tilt again, the way it did earlier when Priya dropped the condo flyer. For a second, I regretted every artisanal pancake I'd ever eaten. Alejandra glanced over my shoulder, read the headline, then said very calmly, "That's a lie." I almost laughed. It came out as air. "We need receipts," I said. "We have them," Priya replied without looking up. "Your grant ledger matches bank statements. I'll attach them to the injunction. But public opinion is sticky. We need narrative." Jonah slid next to us with a little recorder. "Truth has to paint faster than a lie. Zeph, give me 60 seconds on the record, then I'll cut it and push to socials." I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. My mouth was dry. Roll," I said. He clicked and nodded. "My name is Zephyr Collins," I said, voice steady because the truth stiffens your spine. "I'm the executive director of the Marigold Cooperative. Tonight, our power was cut after we received illegal eviction notices from a shell company created by one of our own board members. We have filed for an emergency injunction. We have every receipt. We will publish a full ledger of transactions. We are not trespassers. We are tenants. We are neighbors. We are Denver." Jonah's eyes softened. "Good," he whispered. "Now say something that bruises." I swallowed and looked at the mural, the house being passed hand to hand. "And to Davis Merritt," I said, almost gently. "If you're watching, your spreadsheets don't account for the cost of our care for each other. You can't evict a community. You can only make it louder." He clicked stop. "Perfect," he said, and jogged off to edit. 10 minutes later, the live stream was a waterfall. Comments scrolled so fast the words blurred. "Nurses Union here. We stand with Marigold. My cousin in 4C says she has footage of the lock guys. Posting now. At Channel 7 tagging you. Councilwoman Reed watching. DM me." I exhaled for the first time in an hour. Then the building shuddered with a metallic clank, like a giant ratcheting a wrench. The lights fluttered and died again. Someone outside whooped. Tay looked up from his notebook, eyes flint. "They're cycling the breaker remotely," he said. "That means someone's got access to the new lock's key or a bypass. This is deliberate." Priya's phone buzzed with a new email. She scanned and swore under her breath. "Davis's lawyer filed a safety complaint with the city," she said, "alleging electrical fire risk and overcrowding. They want an inspector to red tag the building tonight." "Can they do that?" Marisol asked. "If an inspector shows and buys the story," Priya said, "we need to be ready. Clear hallways, no candles, no space heaters. This place needs to look like a safety brochure." We moved. People stashed mattresses dragged into hallways for extra guests. We stacked boxes neatly against walls. We propped stairwell doors open. The Diaz twins put out an alert. If city shows up, we cooperate. We keep cameras rolling. We speak one at a time. I printed a one-page fact sheet on the last thimble of battery. Who we are, what happened, what we've done, what we're asking. Bullet points like heartbeat lines. In a corner, Mr. Reeves hummed an old tune so low it sounded like the building breathing. I wanted to crawl into that sound and sleep a week. Instead, I opened my laptop and started the Marigold ledger. Homepage, the mural. Tabs, timeline, transactions, tenants, press court. I uploaded the bank statements we'd scrubbed of personal info. I typed captions that didn't get cute, dates, amounts, purpose, from, to. The numbers were their own dirty poetry. 28,000, 42,000, 1,400 that paid for a stakeholder retreat at a lodge where none of us were stakeholders. My anxiety tried to nudge my hand off the trackpad with its clammy little fingers. I kept typing. Around midnight, Priya called for a circle. We sat cross-legged on the scuffed floor, knees knocking. She laid out the morning like a battle map. "Hearing at 8:30, she said. "Judge Daniels." Pragmatic, not cruel. If we arrive organized with clean affidavits and proof of irreparable harm, we have a shot at a temporary restraining order and a stay on evictions. What about the buyers? I asked. The pre-sales? Different docket, she said. But an injunction buys time. Time is leverage. Time is life, Mr. Reeves said. I nodded. While Priya's in court, we launched the buyback fund, I said. Name it, brand it, blast it. Sunflower, Marisol said immediately. They turned toward the light. I smiled. A small, real thing. Sunflower Fund it is. Goal 1, emergency legal costs and relocation support if needed. Goal 2, a war chest to make a counteroffer if we can pry the contract open. People will say we can't outbid capital, Jonas said, setting his recorder aside. That it's naive. People said a co-op couldn't last 5 years on a block that smelled like gentrification in a scented candle. I said. We lasted 10. The door buzzer rasped, a primitive insect sound. Everyone froze. Tay looked at the security cam feed on his phone, battery pack taped to the router, still limping along. 2 uniforms, he said, city SUV behind them, clipboard. Priya stood. Okay, this is it. We rehearsed the script like lines before curtain. Good evening, officers. We're cooperating. We've filed for an injunction. No candles, no hazards. Here's our counsel. We're residents, not trespassers. We request a translator for Spanish-speaking tenants. We are recording for transparency. The buzzer rasped again, longer. Someone banged the metal gate with something heavy. Don't open yet, Priya said quietly. Everyone in positions. Zephyr, you and I at the door. Jonah, film. Alejandra, with me for translation. Tay, be ready to walk them through the panels. No one argues. No one yells. I wiped my palms on my jeans and felt the exhaustion trying to yawn my resolve open. I pictured Davis's smirk, the condo rendering with our mural erased, the kids asleep under jackets on the carpet. I found the steadiness again, that seatbelt click inside. It held. We walked to the door through the soft light of 100 little phones and opened the inner gate. Blue fabric, city seal, reflective tape catching halos of battery light. Evening, I said, smiling like someone who knew the law better than a liar knows a loophole. I'm Zephyr, Executive Director. This is Priya, our counsel. The taller officer consulted his clipboard. Ma'am, we've received a safety complaint about this building, he said. Electrical hazard. Overcrowding. We're here to conduct an inspection and, if necessary, issue a notice to vacate. Behind him, the city inspector stepped forward holding a red tag like a threat in paper form. We'll need access to the electrical room, the inspector said. Now. Priya handed over our 1-page fact sheet, then smiled with the exact temperature of the rules. Of course, she said. We'll accompany you. And just so it's clear, we're on the record and we've filed for an emergency injunction in the morning. This is our home. The inspector's mouth tightened. He lifted the red tag, and I saw it, just for a flicker, in the reflection of his clipboard. A second city SUV idling behind the first. Inside, a familiar silhouette in a Patagonia vest, tilted back like a man watching his own fireworks show. Davis. He wasn't even pretending to be somewhere else. My breath hissed through my teeth. Showtime, Jonah whispered, and hit record. The inspector held the red tag like it was already glued to our door. Behind him, Davis leaned back in that SUV like he was directing the scene. I tasted copper in my mouth. Priya's voice broke the moment, calm but sharp. Before you proceed, Inspector, note that we have documented sabotage in the electrical room. Unauthorized lockouts, unauthorized devices. We've preserved evidence. The inspector frowned. Sabotage? By parties with a financial interest in this property, Priya said smoothly. Which means if you tag us without investigating that, you are validating a fraudulent complaint. Jonah's camera light clicked on. The inspector's eyes flickered toward it. He didn't like being filmed. Good. I stepped forward, heart jackhammering but voice steady. We've kept our building safe. We filed for an injunction. We're cooperating fully. But if you red tag us tonight, you're enabling displacement. Elderly residents, families, essential workers. This isn't paperwork. These are lives. The taller officer shifted uneasily. We're just here to check hazards, ma'am. Tay cleared his throat. Come with me. I'll show you the panels. They disappeared down the stairwell, cameras trailing them like spotlights. In the room, we huddled like actors waiting for reviews. Mr. Reeves muttered, "If they kick me out, I've got nowhere but a cot at my niece's." The Diaz twins whispered updates from the live stream. Viewers. 2.3K. Trending locally. Marigold in the dark climbing. I wanted to hold everyone's fear in my hands and squeeze it into courage, but my hands were shaking too hard. Then Priya leaned toward me, low and fast. We might hold tonight, but Davis is moving pieces faster than we can. Tomorrow's hearing is survival, not victory. You need leverage outside the courtroom. What leverage? I whispered. Money, she said. Public pressure. Proof that tenants are ready to buy back what he stole. The Sunflower Fund. I nodded, like it wasn't absurd for a broke co-op to imagine raising millions, but absurdity was survival's cousin. Then we launch it tonight, I said. By the time the inspector came back up, we had the page live. Sunflower Fund, Save the Marigold, header photo, the mural. First line, we are not trespassers, we are a community, help us fight for our home. The inspector looked rattled. Tay had walked him through every breaker, every taped label, every padlock that didn't belong. Not safe to red tag without further review, he muttered finally. We'll document and escalate. Thank you, Priya said, shaking his hand like it was the most normal midnight chat in the world. The officers glanced toward the SUV, but Davis's seat was empty now. The car idled, driver staring straight ahead. Coward. The inspector left. The officers followed. The SUV peeled away. When the gate clanged shut behind them, the room exhaled as one. We weren't evicted. Not tonight. 2 a.m. looked like a war camp. Kids asleep in corners. Adults hunched over laptops and chargers like gamblers around a dying fire. The live stream still buzzing, donations ticking up like popcorn. $500, $1,200, $3,700. People are adding notes, Marisol whispered. She read one aloud. I grew up in a co-op in Boulder. Donating in memory of my mom. Keep fighting. I pressed my hands to my eyes. For the first time all night, I almost cried in relief instead of rage. But then my phone buzzed with a new text. Unknown number. You think hashtags can buy real estate? Cute. Check tomorrow's Denver Business Journal. I already closed the deal. My stomach iced over. Closed? Already? I shoved the phone at Priya. She scanned, swore, then flipped her laptop around. Impossible, she said. Title transfers take days, sometimes weeks. Unless he had the contract lined up months ago, I finished. Which meant he hadn't just stolen. He'd planned, layered every move while I was busy running food drives and mural projects. The rage in me didn't flare. It condensed, sharp and cold. I stood. Okay, I said, voice shaking but clear. If he already has papers in motion, then we don't just fight in court. We fight in public. He wants a tower? Fine. We'll show Denver whose bones it's built on. Jonah looked up from his recorder. You're thinking escalation. I'm thinking spectacle, I said. Media, protest, pressure campaign. We tell the story so loud the buyers can't touch it without burning their hands. The Diaz twins grinned like revolutionaries. TikTok loves spectacle, one said. Flash mob protest? Bigger, I said. Tomorrow morning, while Priya's in court, we stage a press conference. In front of the building. Every tenant, every ally. We show the mural. We tell our story. We drop the ledger. We drop the fund. And we dare the city to ignore us. Marisol's eyes shone with tears that were more fire than water. Let's make them watch. 5 a.m. The eastern sky bruised purple. The building smelled like burnt coffee and fear mixed with determination. I stepped outside with Jonah to draft the press release. The street was empty except for a delivery truck and a jogger. But then Jonah froze. Zeph. I followed his gaze. Across the street, under a flickering lamppost, a man stood with a camera lens the size of a telescope pointed at our windows. When he saw us looking, he didn't run. He just lowered the camera, tipped an invisible hat, and got into a black SUV that slid away silent as smoke. Jonah swore. Not press. Private. Surveillance. I clenched my fists so tight they hurt. Davis wasn't just watching the building. He was cataloging us, turning neighbors into data points. And I knew, with a certainty that hollowed my stomach, that tomorrow wasn't just about court or headlines. It was about war. Because Davis had already moved us from tenants into targets. And he wasn't planning to stop. By sunrise, the Marigold smelled like burned coffee grounds, Sharpies, and adrenaline. We were hollow-eyed, buzzing, half terrified and half invincible. At 7:30 a.m., Priya stood at the whiteboard, sleeves rolled, hair already falling out of her bun. Okay, listen up. Hearing in 1 hour. I need Zephyr, Marisol, and Mr. Reeves with me as named plaintiffs. The rest of you, outside. Press conference. Big, loud, clean message. No infighting, no side tangents. Cameras, love clarity. The Diaz twins were already sketching a banner on a bedsheet. You can't evict community. Jonah clipped mics to his jacket. Alejandra was practicing her translation of the press statement so her grandmother could speak on camera too. I hadn't slept. My voice was gravel. My stomach was a pit. But when I looked at the mural, the hands passing the house, I knew I wasn't walking into court as myself alone. I was carrying all of us. The courthouse lobby smelled like floor polish and nerves. Reporters clustered like vultures, their badges swinging. Cameras blinked red. One called out, Zephyr, do you have a response to allegations of financial misconduct? Another, isn't it true your board voted you out? Flashes popped. I wanted to shrink. But Priya's hand pressed lightly against my back, steadying me like a spine brace. So I lifted my chin. My response, I said into the mics, is that our receipts are public. Our ledger is live. Every dollar accounted for. We are not trespassers. We are Denver families fighting to keep our homes. And today, we're asking the court to recognize that. Reporters yelled follow-ups, but Priya ushered us through security. In the courtroom, fluorescent light flattened everyone into paper dolls. Judge Daniels was compact, gray-haired, with the weary patience of someone who'd heard every story twice. Opposite us sat Davis and his lawyer, a slick man in a navy suit with cufflinks like knives. Davis leaned back, Patagonia vest zipped, smirk just as polished as the lawyer's shoes. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles ached. The clerk called the case. Priya rose like she'd done this 1,000 times. Your Honor, we're seeking a temporary restraining order to halt illegal evictions and preserve the status quo until this matter can be litigated properly. The tenants are facing irreparable harm. Elderly residents, children, essential workers. Notices were issued without lawful authority. Funds were diverted. Evidence is in your binder. The judge flipped open the thick file Priya had handed over. The pages whispered like ghosts. Davis's lawyer rose next. Your Honor, this is a simple matter of governance. The board authorized a management subsidiary. My client acted within his delegated authority. These tenants are emotional, but property law is clear. Ownership has shifted. They are, regrettably, trespassing. The word cracked through me like ice. Trespassing. In my own home, in our mural, in Marisol's kitchen where we'd celebrated birthdays with tamales and cheap beer. I wanted to stand and scream. Instead, I sat very still, letting Priya do the screaming with footnotes and precedents. But when she called me as a witness, my knees still knocked as I approached the stand. The bailiff swore me in. I clutched the wood rail like a lifeline. State your name, Priya said gently. Zephyr Collins. And your role at the Marigold Cooperative? Executive Director, I said, voice firmer now. For the past 7 years. She nodded. And what is the Marigold to you? I swallowed. It's not just housing, it's community, it's survival. It's the only reason Marisol can work doubles as a nurse without worrying about rent spikes. It's the only reason Mr. Reeves isn't in a nursing home. It's kids biking in the courtyard. It's murals and potlucks and safety nets we built ourselves because no one else would. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Even the judge looked up from his notes. And what happened last week? Priya asked. I told him. The lock changes. The notices. The fake subsidiary. The money trail. By the time I finished, my voice was raw. Priya handed up exhibits. Copies of leases, the ledger printouts, photos of the padlocked panel. The judge flipped through them, brow furrowed. Davis's lawyer cross-examined, of course. Ms. Collins, isn't it true your board voted on this resolution? Yes, but the language was buried. Isn't it true you've been accused of misusing funds? Yes, by the man sitting next to you. Isn't it true you're personally opposed to redevelopment? Yes, because redevelopment means displacement. I kept my voice calm. Truth has a spine. You just have to lean on it. Finally, the judge closed the file with a soft thud. I've heard enough, he said. Given the evidence of procedural irregularities, the documented harm to residents, and the imminent risk of eviction, this court grants a temporary restraining order. No tenants may be displaced until a full hearing. Utilities must be restored immediately. Any tampering will be sanctioned. Gasps rippled through the room. I felt my lungs expand for the first time in days, but then the judge added, "This is not a ruling on ownership. That question remains open. A reprieve, not a victory. A pause button, not a stop." Still, when I stepped out into the sunlight and saw the press conference in full swing, banners waving, kids holding homemade signs, chants echoing off brick, I knew we'd bought time. Jonah handed me a mic. "Judge ruled?" he asked. "Yes," I said into the crowd. "We stay. For now. But this isn't over. Davis wants to flip our home into condos. He wants profit over people. So today, we launch the Sunflower Fund. Today, we fight for our future." The crowd roared. Cameras zoomed in. The live stream ticker rolled. Donations spiked past $20,000. And then, over the chant, over the cheers, my phone buzzed with a new notification. Breaking. Denver Business Journal confirms preliminary sale agreement for Marigold property. Buyer consortium includes national real estate giant Bellamy Urban Partners. My stomach dropped. Bellamy. They weren't local flippers. They were sharks with skyscraper teeth. And if Davis had already tied our future to them, then we weren't just fighting him anymore. We were fighting an empire. Bellamy Urban Partners. The name hit like a stone tossed into a still pond, ripples spreading fast. The crowd outside the courthouse was still cheering when Jonah grabbed my arm. "Zeph, this isn't small time anymore. Bellamy doesn't play. They'll roll out a PR team, lobbyists, maybe even fake community reps to drown you out. Marisol overheard and paled. They own those glass towers by Union Station. My cousin cleans offices there. He says they treat janitors like ghosts. I stared at the notification again. Bellamy wasn't just big. They were a brand, a machine with glossy brochures about urban vitality and sustainable living. Translation: condos no one in Denver could afford. Priya's jaw tightened as she scanned her phone. This changes everything. Bellamy has lawyers stacked to the ceiling. They'll try to crush the injunction, argue public benefit, offer token relocation funds. But we have something they don't. What? I asked, desperate. She looked at the crowd behind me. This. By noon, the press conference had morphed into a rally. Signs bloomed like wildflowers. Save the Marigold. Housing is a human right. People over profit. The Diaz twins choreographed chants for TikTok. Jonah recorded interviews for his podcast. Alejandra's grandmother spoke in Spanish, her words translated in real time, her voice breaking when she said, "We built this home together. Don't take it away." I stepped up to the mic, heart hammering. Bellamy Urban Partners wants you to believe they're buying a building, I said. But what they're really buying is the erasure of a community. We are nurses, teachers, retirees, families. We are Denver. And we are not for sale. Cheers rolled down the block. Cameras swung, hashtags trended, and still, behind it all, I felt Davis watching, smirking, pulling strings. By evening, the rally thinned, but inside the Marigold, our war room buzzed hotter than ever. Priya spread new documents on the table. Bellamy's playbook is predictable. They'll push a narrative: unsafe housing, mismanaged leadership, opportunity for revitalization. They'll dangle relocation stipends, just enough to fracture unity. Our counter-strategy: transparency, solidarity, visibility. Tay scratched his beard. And money. We can't pretend donations alone will outbid Bellamy. I know, I said quietly, but every dollar buys us leverage. Every receipt proves the city this isn't a pipe dream. We need allies, unions, churches, neighborhood associations, anyone who can chip in or amplify. Jonah leaned forward. I can get you on 3 local podcasts tomorrow, and maybe a live stream debate with Bellamy's PR rep if they take the bait. Good, Priya said. Zephyr, you're the face. You need to be visible, credible, unshakable. Unshakable. The word landed heavy, because inside I was all cracks. At midnight, I finally slipped into my room. The mural outside my window glowed faint under streetlight. I sat on my bed, scrolling the Sunflower Fund. $46,000 raised. From strangers, from neighbors across the city, from people who believed in us. But Bellamy's first deposit was probably 10 times that. My chest ached with the weight of it. Could we really fight giants? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. Nice speech today. Too bad Bellamy already owns your future. You can save yourself, Zeph. Sign on as community liaison. I'll make sure your name stays clean. Otherwise, when Bellamy steamrolls you, you'll be nothing but a bitter footnote. I threw the phone across the bed. For a moment, I let the doubt seep in. What if he was right? What if fighting only prolonged the pain? What if I was leading everyone into a battle we couldn't win? But then I remembered Mr. Reeves humming in the dark. Marisol clutching her notice. Alejandra's grandmother's trembling voice. Number. We weren't fighting for profit. We were fighting for each other. I picked the phone back up, typed 3 words. See you tomorrow, and hit send. The next morning, Denver woke up to headlines. Marigold Cooperative residents resist Bellamy buyout. Marigold in the dark trends as tenants fight back. Grassroots fundraiser hits $50,000 in 24 hours. Momentum. For once, the city wasn't just watching, it was listening. But just as I felt hope spark, Priya stormed into the community room, face grim. "They've escalated," she said. "Bellamy filed a motion to fast-track condemnation of the building. They're claiming imminent safety hazards. If the judge grants it, we could be forced out before we even argue ownership." My heart thudded. "How soon?" "48 hours," she said. "Maybe less." The room went still. Marisol cursed under her breath. Tay slammed his notebook shut. Alejandra whispered, "Dios mío!" And I felt the fear clamp down. But beneath it, something sharper rose. "Then we go bigger," I said. "Courtroom, streets, media, everything. If they want a fast track, we'll flood it. We'll make eviction politically radioactive." Jonah grinned. "Let's burn their playbook." I nodded. Time to turn up the lights. But even as the room rallied, I knew Bellamy wasn't just going to fight, they were going to crush. And Davis would be holding the hammer. That night, as we prepped for battle, a neighbor burst in breathless. "Zeph, you need to see this." She held up her phone. A video was trending. Grainy, shaky footage. Me, in my apartment. Late at night. Exhausted, pacing, mumbling to myself. Edited with captions. "Unstable leader. Can she really handle millions in funds?" My blood ran cold. Because someone had filmed me. Inside my own home. Which meant the surveillance wasn't just outside anymore. It was here. Inside the Marigold. The video looped on the neighbor's phone. Me, pacing in my room. Me, muttering half-coherent thoughts about fundraising and court deadlines. Edited captions twisting my exhaustion into instability. Unstable. Unfit. Dangerous with money. My chest locked tight. "They were in my room," I whispered. My neighbors froze, horror flickering across their faces. "Hidden camera," Tay said grimly. "They planted more than that nanny cam in the basement." Panic fluttered up my throat. I wanted to run, to scrub every inch of my apartment with bleach, to rip open walls until I found the lens staring back. But Priya caught my shoulders. "Breathe, Zephyr. This is meant to break you, to make you spiral. Don't give them the victory." I swallowed hard. The fear didn't go away, but it bent into something sharper. "Then we make them spiral," I said. The next 12 hours blurred into controlled chaos. Teams swept the building for bugs. We found 2 more, one tucked in a smoke detector, another behind a vent. Both live transmitters. "Police?" Marisol asked. Priya shook her head. "Best case, they file a report and shrug. Worst case, it disappears in red tape while Bellamy accelerates condemnation. Number. We handle this publicly." So we staged it. Jonah recorded as I held up the devices, wires dangling like entrails. "These were found inside our homes," I said, voice steady despite the bile rising in my throat. "Bellamy and their allies want to frame us as unstable." But who's unstable? Families fighting to stay, or billion-dollar firms planting surveillance in bedrooms. We posted it. The clip caught fire. By morning, it had 200,000 views. Comments poured in. "Bellamy out here running a spy movie? This is why no one trusts developers." I don't care about property law. This feels evil. Momentum. But also risk. Because the louder we got, the more Davis would push back. At dawn, Priya got the notice. Emergency hearing on Bellamy's condemnation motion. We scrambled, printing affidavits, prepping witnesses, charging every phone and mic. The courtroom was packed this time. Reporters lined the benches. Community allies filled the gallery, their shirts hand-painted with sunflowers. Bellamy's lawyers filed in like a storm front, 5 of them in sleek suits, laptops glowing. And Davis, of course, leaning back with that smirk. The lead lawyer launched their case. The Marigold is unsafe. Electrical tampering, overcrowding, leadership instability. The building poses imminent risk to residents and must be vacated immediately in the interest of public safety. Leadership instability. They gestured to the video. Me, pacing, edited captions screaming unfit. The judge's eyes flicked to me. My stomach lurched, but Priya rose like fire. Your Honor, these residents are the victims of a calculated campaign of fraud and intimidation. Funds diverted, locks changed illegally, surveillance planted in their homes. What's unsafe is the predatory behavior of Bellamy and their agent, Mr. Merritt. We ask not only that condemnation be denied, but that the court compel discovery into these unlawful tactics. Gasps rippled through the room. The judge raised an eyebrow. And then Priya played our clip. The bug, the wires, my voice calling out Bellamy's tactics. The gallery murmured louder. The press scribbled furiously. Davis's smirk twitched. Just a flicker. But I saw it. When the judge recessed, the crowd outside exploded with chants. No justice, no condos. We are Marigold. I felt a surge of power. Fragile, but real. That night, the Sunflower Fund crossed $150,000. Unions pledged support. Churches sent donations. Even a local brewery offered proceeds from their next batch, Sunflower Saison. But in my gut, I knew. This wasn't the endgame. Bellamy could outspend us tenfold. If we wanted to win, we needed not just money or court orders. We needed to expose Davis so thoroughly that even Bellamy cut him loose, and I knew exactly how. We built the trap in 3 days. Jonah, the Diaz twins, Priya, and I set up a live stream billed as a transparency forum. We invited press. We invited allies. We even invited Bellamy reps, though we knew they wouldn't show. The stage was simple. Folding chairs, the mural as backdrop, microphones taped to broomsticks. But the energy crackled like a fuse waiting to light. I opened with calm fire. We've been accused of instability, but instability doesn't look like potlucks and murals. Instability looks like forged subsidiaries, stolen funds, and cameras in our bedrooms. Tonight, we show you receipts. We unveiled the Marigold ledger, projected on a sheet pinned to the wall. Every transfer, every consulting fee, every shell company traced back to Davis Merritt. People gasped. Reporters snapped photos. The live stream comments exploded. And then, like we'd hoped, Davis showed up. Not in person, but in the comments, under a burner account, cocky, taunting. Those transfers were market standard. Zephyr knows it. Ask her about the $17,000 brunch. Jonah grinned. Got him. Because we were recording the metadata. The comment traced back to Davis's IP address. We had proof he was behind the smear. Priya smiled like a shark. We'll add this to Discovery. The live stream peaked at 500,000 viewers. Donations surged past $400,000. And the next morning, headlines blared. Developer caught planting bugs, falsifying funds. Sunflower Fund passes $500,000 in 72 hours. Bellamy Urban Partners distances from local consultant amid scandal. That last one was the crack in the armor. Bellamy issued a bland statement. We were unaware of the alleged misconduct. We are reviewing our relationship with Mr. Merritt. Which meant they were cutting him loose. When Davis called me that night, his voice was venom. You think you've won? Bellamy doesn't care about me. They'll still take the building. You'll still be out on the street. No, I said, steady. Because Bellamy doesn't like messy. And you made them messy. Silence. Then a low growl. This isn't over. But it was. At least for him. 2 weeks later, Judge Daniels ruled the Marigold's ownership transfer was invalid. The funds siphoned illegally had to be returned. The co-op retained standing to buy back the building. With the Sunflower Fund, union backing, and a city grant leveraged through public pressure, we made the counteroffer. Bellamy, desperate to cut their losses after the PR disaster, accepted. The Marigold was ours again. The night we signed the papers, the courtyard filled with music. Kids ran between legs. Neighbors danced under strings of lights. Mr. Reeves raised a glass and shouted, "To Zephyr!" I shook my head, smiling through tears. No, to all of us. Because revenge hadn't been about destruction. It had been about preservation, about taking Davis's theft and turning it into proof of our strength. The mural glowed in the light. Hands passing a house, brighter now with a fresh coat of paint. I breathed deep, the air sharp and sweet. For the first time in weeks, the coin in my throat dissolved. We had won. Not by outspending, not by outlawyering, but by outlasting, by outshining, by outloving. And as the music carried into the Denver night, I knew this wasn't just the end of a fight. It was the beginning of something bigger. Because if the Marigold could rise, maybe other places could too. Maybe the city was listening. Maybe we had lit something no developer could buy.